aviation experts just uncovered the disturbing secret inside the AI-171 crash, and it's way darker than anyone expected. For years, it escaped every inspection, every log, and every so-called world-class safety check, sitting there like a ticking time bomb. Now the entire aviation industry is left scrambling to explain how a plane this advanced could carry a secret this reckless. On 12 June 2025, it prepared for a journey from Ahmedabad to London with a scheduled stop in Mumbai. On board were 241 people, passengers and crew, all ready for a routine international flight. The weather was clear, the skies calm, and the crew's reports were normal. Just 32 seconds into the flight, something happened that aviation experts still call almost impossible. Both engines failed at the exact same time. Not one, not staggered, but both simultaneously. In aviation, twin-engine failures are nightmares so rare that most pilots only ever see them in training simulations. On AI-171, this terrifying scenario was real. The pilots had no time, no chance, and no way out. No distress call was ever made. No warning came over the radio. The Dreamliner, just seconds into its climb, began falling. Within a minute, it plunged into the ground, breaking apart in a fiery crash near the airport. There were no survivors. Families and investigators alike were left asking one haunting question. How could a nearly new Dreamliner, with no weather issues and no reported mechanical problems, just fall from the sky? And yet, as devastating as the crash was, the true horror wasn't the accident itself. It was what investigators found later inside the aircraft, a discovery that shook the entire aviation industry. When investigators began combing through the wreckage, nothing seemed to add up. The weather was perfect, so it wasn't a storm. The engines were practically brand new, so mechanical wear didn't make sense. Fuel contamination? Ruled out. Software malfunction? Tests showed the systems had been functioning normally until the very moment the engines cut off. Pilot error? No evidence at all. The crew hadn't even had time to make a mayday call. Every logical explanation was eliminated, one by one, and you won't believe what came out at the end. The puzzle deepened. Commercial aviation is built on layers of safety, redundancies stacked on redundancies. For both engines of a Dreamliner to fail instantly, without warning, was beyond rare. It was unthinkable. Investigators were forced to ask the question no one wanted to ask. If it wasn't nature, and it wasn't the pilots, then what was it? The search turned toward the aircraft itself. Specialists began dismantling panels, checking wiring, combing through every inch of the cockpit and avionics systems. For days, nothing unusual turned up. Then came the breakthrough. Behind a sealed panel, a place never meant to be opened mid-flight, they found something that made even seasoned aviation experts pause. Hidden inside the Dreamliner was a small electronic device, crudely wired into the aircraft's power and sensor systems. At first glance, it looked nothing like the sophisticated avionics normally found on a Boeing 787. Its placement was rough, almost amateur, but its wiring wasn't random. It was tapped directly into power lines and signal pathways, giving it access to the most critical flight controls. Investigators immediately flagged it as something that didn't belong, not part of the 787's design, not mentioned in any technical manual, and most importantly, not listed in Boeing's official maintenance logs. For Boeing, this was a nightmare scenario because that revelation wasn't enough. Every component on a Dreamliner, from the engines to the smallest circuit board, is cataloged, certified, and traceable back to its origin. Yet here was a foreign object, wired into the cockpit systems of a plane that had been in commercial service since 2025. Its very existence violated the principle of absolute oversight that modern aviation depends on. The disturbing truth was clear. This wasn't supposed to be there at all, and yet it had the potential to interfere with the aircraft's fly-by-wire system, the digital nervous system that allows a 787 to fly. The first reaction was fear. In an age where aviation security is tightly bound with counterterrorism, the obvious question arose, was this sabotage? Could Flight AI-171 have been the target of a deliberate attack? Investigators examined the device for evidence of tampering with communications, signals, or data transfers. They searched for malicious code or any trace of external control. Nothing surfaced. The device wasn't transmitting, it wasn't receiving, and it wasn't acting like a typical hacking tool. That only made it more unsettling. If it wasn't active sabotage, then what was it? Boeing engineers were brought in to study the device. Their conclusion was even more alarming. This was not a Boeing part. It had never been part of the assembly line in Everett, Washington, where the 787 fleet was built. That left only two possibilities. Either the device had been installed later during third-party maintenance by a subcontracted repair facility somewhere in the world, or it was a leftover from unauthorized testing, never documented and never removed before the aircraft went into service. Both options were disastrous, and do you know why it shook the whole aviation world? Well, because if it was installed during maintenance, it meant that one of the most tightly regulated industries on Earth had allowed a foreign component to slip past every layer of oversight. If it was the result of experimental testing, it meant an airline had operated a Dreamliner with undocumented equipment for months, possibly years. The official crash date, June 12, 2025, could mark not just the end of a flight, but the exposure of a hidden problem that might have gone unnoticed forever. The most chilling part? Experts admitted that without the dual-engine failure, this device might never have been found. It wasn't positioned to be visible during routine checks. It wasn't listed on service records. Thousands of hours of operation had passed with it silently in place, raising the horrifying possibility that other aircraft could be flying right now with similar undocumented hardware. When word of the discovery leaked out of the investigation, panic spread quickly across the aviation industry. Airlines operate fleets worth billions of dollars on the assumption that every component is verified, logged, and traceable. The idea that a Dreamliner, one of the most modern jets in existence, could carry an unauthorized electronic module sent shockwaves through airline executives and regulators alike. Boeing engineers were the first to react. They confirmed in internal reviews that no such component had ever come from their production lines. That confirmation narrowed the possibilities but widened the blame. If Boeing hadn't installed it, then oversight had failed somewhere else in the supply chain. Attention immediately shifted to maintenance, repair, and overhaul facilities, known as MROs, where airlines often subcontract work. By early July 2025, regulators across the world were already on high alert, and why wouldn't they be? The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, and the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, EASA, began issuing internal memos reviewing maintenance certification procedures. Airlines in Asia, the Middle East, and Europe were ordered to inspect their Boeing 787 fleets for any signs of unauthorized hardware. Technical bulletins circulated from Boeing to its global partners, warning of potential vulnerabilities in avionics bays and cockpit panels. The media caught on quickly, and headlines described it as a global aviation scare. The fact that the device wasn't malicious didn't calm nerves. If anything, the ambiguity made it worse. Because if no one could say how it got there, then no one could guarantee it wasn't present on other planes. For airlines, this was more than a safety issue. It was a financial one. Grounding a single 787 costs millions in lost revenue. Yet one by one, carriers across continents announced temporary inspections and delayed flights. The Dreamliner, once celebrated as Boeing's most advanced and efficient passenger aircraft, was suddenly under suspicion, and all of it traced back to one small device hidden behind a panel that should never have been opened. By August 2025, aviation watchdogs were openly calling the AI-171 investigation a turning point. The International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, which oversees international flight standards, was asked to review procedures for tracking unauthorized modifications. Maintenance logs, long kept in paper or digital spreadsheets, were now being pushed toward blockchain-based systems that would be harder to tamper with or bypass. The most chilling detail in the investigation of Air India Flight 171 wasn't what the unauthorized device could do. It was how long it had been there. Experts reviewing the aircraft's service history concluded that the Dreamliner had flown thousands of hours across international routes with this component hidden behind its cockpit panel. Every inspection, from pre-flight walkarounds to scheduled C-checks, had missed it. Every system check, every maintenance cycle, every certification sign-off failed to raise a single red flag. The device had passed silently through the global aviation system, unnoticed and unchallenged. This wasn't a failure of hardware. It was a failure of oversight. For decades, commercial aviation has operated under one principle: nothing goes unnoticed. Every nut, every bolt, every piece of wiring is tracked and logged. Yet AI-171 proved that a foreign object could survive years inside a cutting-edge Boeing 787 without detection. Investigators coined a phrase for it: silent interference. Not the work of hijackers or terrorists, but the far more unsettling risk of human negligence hidden inside the very trust chain the industry depends on. At the regulatory level, things move just as quickly. The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration (FAA) and the European Union Aviation Safety Agency (EASA) began pushing for blockchain-based maintenance logging systems. The logic was simple. Traditional maintenance records, whether paper logs or digital spreadsheets, were too easy to manipulate or overlook. With blockchain, every modification, no matter how small, would be digitally stamped, traceable, and permanent. By August 2025, airlines in Europe, North America, and Asia were under pressure to adopt stricter maintenance tracking technology. This put outsourced maintenance contracts under heavy fire. For decades, airlines had reduced costs by relying on third-party maintenance, repair, and overhaul facilities, often located outside their home countries. Now, those same contracts were being questioned. If oversight failed in one Dreamliner, what guarantee existed for others serviced by subcontractors with less transparency? Several European carriers announced internal audits of their MRO agreements. Emirates in Dubai hinted at bringing more of its heavy maintenance back in-house. The outsourcing strategy that had defined modern aviation economics was suddenly on trial. By 2025, the AI-171 crash wasn't just an accident, it was a warning. Not about what failed, but about what was never meant to be there. And the haunting question remains: how many planes are still flying with hidden dangers? So stick around and subscribe, because the next revelation might change how you see flying forever.